Hi, and welcome to And If Love Remains. I'm your host, Mike Levitt, and we have a very special episode today. Again, I have co-hosting with me, Dr. Elias Axel Pedersen. Welcome to the show, Elias. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, Mike. It's going to be a lot of fun today.
I think so. We have several guests and exciting. This is, I don't know, maybe
it's our first, I think.
We've had more than one guest at a time. But we have the hosts, plural, of the Piano podcast. We have Yukimi, Clara, and Eric. I want to welcome you guys to the show. And Yukimi, why don't you start with us and kind of give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of take it around and let everybody introduce themselves, and we'll go from there.
All right. This is Yukimi. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I am a piano teacher. I'm a pianist. And I currently live in Brooklyn, New York. And I met Clara and Eric through this thing called the Open Forum. And we can talk about it more. But anyway, I teach piano lessons to students from 4 and 5 to older students, and I love to play romantic period literature, and so that's who I am.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Clara, what about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi. Thank you so much, Mike and Elias, right?
Elias, yeah. And by the way,
Elias,
you're coming in from Milan, just for all those listeners. It's pretty cool.
That's right. I just arrived a few hours ago. First time here. I didn't get lost, almost. I couldn't make it on the plane yesterday, so it took me 2 days to get here, but I'm here and just taught a lesson. So I am also I'm a good friend with Yukimi and Eric, and we met a while back, and we started our podcast last year. It's only been a year, but we have been working so hard, and we're so excited. So again, normally I'm located on the Upper East Side, and I'm a classical concert pianist, originally from China, but well, like you said, right now I'm traveling around the world and taking my foldable piano with me. So I will spend a month in Europe and still teaching and hosting. So that's me. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
you're welcome. Eric, tell us about yourself. Now you're, I guess, friends with Elias.
That's right. Yeah, my name is Eric Hunter, and Elias and I go way back to undergrad, which I don't even want to talk about how long ago that was now. I just can't believe it. But Elias is one of my oldest and best friends. And actually, we met as stand partners in orchestra back when we were both violinists as well as pianists.
Wow.
Yeah. And then
those were the dark ages, huh, Elias?
Yeah. 98. I'm gonna date us.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
Thanks a lot, Elias. Anyway, we're really close friends, and we've supported each other throughout the years, always bouncing off ideas about music and piano and life. And right now I'm based in New York with Clara and Yukimi. I live on the Lower East Side, and I'm a classical pianist and composer and teacher.
Oh, wonderful. Well, all of you, thank you so much for being on the show. Eric, I want to start a little bit with you because Yukimi kind of mentioned this, the open forum, I think it's what's called. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and how you guys met?
Okay, yeah, sure. So basically, I started this initiative called Open Forum a few years ago because I wanted to meet other piano teachers. I had been living in New York City for a few years at that point, and teaching in my private studio, and I felt very isolated, and I felt a real need to see what other teachers were doing and just talk about our students and have some kind of a community. So I thought, well, what if I just get a bunch of people together over breakfast or something and we just chat, because musicians always have so much to talk about. So I started this group called Open Forum under the auspices of the Piano Teachers Congress of New York, which is our local teachers group. And it was quite successful. We always have really, really good conversations. There's usually a topic of the month. We meet once a month. And it was through that I met Yukimi and Clara, who were two of my regulars and biggest supporters and now best friends.
That's right.
And just to quickly make a note that during the pandemic, we moved to Zoom, of course, rather than meeting in person. And so once I started doing that, people could join from all over. And I'm planning on expanding that next year. And so I hope anybody who's listening, who's a piano teacher and interested in joining, will look us up and join a meeting. But it was because of Open Forum that Yukimi got the idea to start our podcast, the Piano Pod. And I'll let Yukimi talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure. So may I continue?
Please.
Yeah. So before, so I have been a regular attendee of Eric's Open Forum for several years, but also I wanted to do podcasting for such a long time. I mean, somebody suggested me to do this like 10, 12 years ago. And then I was like, the first time I heard it, like, podcast, what? But these days, podcasting is like everybody does almost. But, it wasn't like that before. So I wasn't sure. Then, fast forward, pandemic hit. And I wanted to start a show about my piano students. And I actually had 2 or 3 episodes of that. But then after all, I only have so many piano students, so I can't continue, right? After
sustainable
20 episodes. And then can you imagine interviewing 10-year-old? Like, what are you going to talk about? Right? Like, how about you? I'm good. That kind of thing.
Right.
So, I mean, it was great. It was fun. So I was like, you know what? I meet with Eric and Clara like monthly at least and talk about great stuff, like about music, about piano. And then we are 3 of us are piano teachers and pianists, and we encounter this frustration of, okay, there's this beautiful tradition of classical music or piano in general. Then there are a bunch of students and families, and what they want in piano lessons, that what we want as a teacher, just had this disconnect. And we realized, and and we're the first people to get in touch with the market, right? We're not teaching this future conservatory students. Maybe there are some. I think Clara used to also have some advanced students, and Eric does too. But that's not the majority of the students we deal with. And then we realized, wow, this is the reality of music education, and then awareness of music education. So we have to do something. We have to talk about it, and then so instead of meeting just the local teachers, I thought, why don't we bring this platform to another level? Podcasting. That way we can talk about it on air, and we can bring guest speakers who are doing some amazing work to keep this tradition and maybe handing down to the next generation. So that's how we started.
So I'm curious, I know you mentioned before, and I've of course followed your podcast basically since you started it. I'm wondering, what are some of the guests that you've brought on, and what your direction sort of is? I mean, why are you choosing certain things? What are you trying to promote and get out there for everybody to listen to? And how has that influenced the choice of your guest artists?
Great. Yeah. Well, let me start first then. Well, first guest was Dr. John Skidmore. So the reason I chose him, well, he actually influenced me to start this podcast because I had a student who was very advanced and extremely talented. He is like 11, 12 years old at the time. And he just was doing a lot of piano competitions. And then one competition he encountered, it was a virtual piano competition. It was during the pandemic. And so he hit his age where just performance anxiety was becoming an issue, right? It wasn't like that before, where, he can just play anything and just not being nervous. But so then I was like, well, I am a pianist. I know how to deal with anxiety, but maybe I should talk to someone expert in this. And so I did some research and I read some articles, and I encountered this one article. I don't remember the name of the magazine, but it was a piano related magazine. And then I got in touch with this performance psychologist who lives in Utah. So he was like, I bought his book. He emailed me and called me. Hey, I just saw that you started this vlog about students. Can I come on the show and talk about it? Like, you know what? Well, then let me talk to my colleagues, Eric and Clara, and if we want to do this, 3 of us together. So that's how we started. So that's the first guest speaker. And we met several times before we even had the actual interview, because it was the first time. So I wasn't sure what to do. Yeah. But he gave us a lot of ideas, and we actually had a very, very good conversation. So that's the start. And then we also invited a second guest, was Vera Anselmo. Yeah, she was a nonprofit. She started this nonprofit organization a long time ago in New York City. So yeah, everybody has his or her story. Yeah, but awesome. Anyway, Eric or Clara, you want to continue?
Yeah, maybe I will say a couple of words, if that's okay. Vera, actually, she was also my old boss when I first moved to New York, young and, hot-minded. And so it was very cool. I think we were able to connect with a lot of artists in this podcasting platform, because a lot of artists, and then we are not obviously only interviewing musicians, like Yukimi said, we interviewed the psychologists, and we are open the school, and we also interview some YouTube artists. One of my former students would happen to be a YouTube sensational. And actually this time when I'm on this trip, European trip, I was just hanging out with one of our old guests, Paolo. He's an Italian composer. He teaches at Manhattan School. Clarinetist, a pianist, educator, but he also is happening to be here. And I'm visiting another old guest, Chantel. Actually, right now she's in the hospital, but we're going to go visit her soon. She has a festival right here outside of Milano, Italy. So, and then later on, I'm going to visit another festival, which I will talk, maybe these are people we could interview later on. So it's really a beautiful platform to connect all the musicians, artists in different fields.
Yeah, I just to add to that real quick, I have to, having started this podcast and having worked with Elias and having to work with some just amazing people, this has been such a revelation for me to be able to connect with people of all sorts. Our podcast is a little more general, and so but it's been a lot of fun to connect and really have a meeting of the minds and all sorts of different avenues. It's been really a remarkable thing for me.
Go ahead, Elias.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So I think I would echo that, we got into this to have something to do during the pandemic, stay busy, because obviously it threw a huge wrench in the life of every musician. But as we got more into it, I mean, like you said, it's just been an amazing platform to connect with other musicians. We decided we wanted to focus on people who were really cutting edge and pushing the industry forward, because, classical music is an old tradition. And what we were really interested in is how are people adapting to the pandemic, to the 21st century, to new technology. And so, we were just able to meet some incredible people and have some incredible conversations.
That's great. Clara, let me ask you, what are maybe a couple of I hate to say tips and tricks, but what are a few things that you've gained that have maybe been a new way of looking things, or as you've done your podcast, how has it affected your teaching?
Oh, it changed a lot of things. I think, first of all, the students are very curious, right? A lot of our students now in my studio, my Russian music, a lot of them, they've been with me since they were babies. And a lot of them are now either in high school or in college. One is actually just got admitted into medical school and still practicing. So for them, it's kind of uplifting, right? Because like Yukimi was sharing, or Eric said, they could play really well from early on, but we are not forcing them to become a professional in any way. It's not that they cannot, but just modern day world, they don't have to become a professional musician to actually enjoy music. So I think us having the platform and they come to the show, they watch us and they come to join the recital, it gave them a way, like, why am I so busy in high school, like Stuyvesant somewhere, but yet I'm still practicing my Chopin etudes every day, right? And they said, well, it's actually kind of cool. I can be a programmer and I can be like Elon Musk and I can be a fantastic pianist. So these are all the great things. And also, I think one thing I want to mention, like, being on the show, like what you guys are doing today, this is very cool. Paulo was actually just telling me that he went to interview the organizers and the head of the Puccini Festival, and now he wants to do a show and inviting us as their guests. So to explore New York music, classical music theme, combining with Italy, and that's also very cool. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's awesome. Getting different voices in there and perspectives and international ones. Actually, I was wondering, you mentioned that one of the guests you had is a YouTube influencer, and was it your former student?
Yeah, he's actually based in Malaysia. Yeah, he was my former student at UMass Amherst, and I taught there. I was in the master's program. He was the undergraduate, and long story short, he was not really a musician to begin with, but he played by ear. But somehow that's the beginning of YouTube. And he started uploading videos, and he became like #1 YouTube pianist in Asia for many, many years. So it's kind of cool,
This is Ray Mack, I want to mention for anybody who wants to check out that episode.
Okay. Wow. Absolutely. So that's interesting to kind of learning from the students too, what they've done and seeing where his career has sort of taken off online.
For sure. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, and another one of our guests who was really taking advantage of online streaming was Jonathan Ong, who I knew from back in my USC days. And he's actually based in Australia, and he's a Twitch streamer. I only heard about, I'm not on Twitch because it's mainly a video game streaming platform. So I never thought somebody would use that to stream live musical performance, but he describes it as digital busking. And he's actually made an entire
great.
Right. He sits there and he plays for hours a day, and he takes requests from people tuning in, and they tip him, and he's incredibly talented, an amazing improviser and arranger. He actually, I think he quit his university job because he was doing so well on Twitch.
Wow.
Amazing. And he streams like 6-7 hours a day, right?
Yeah, he works hard.
More than a full-time job.
Yeah, of course.
But you know what? The old saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So
yeah, amen to that.
Exactly true.
Well, that's exactly how I feel about doing this project, this podcasting, because honestly, it's taking a lot. It's almost like a full-time job, this podcast, because we do twice a month, but we prep a lot. We study a lot about the guest speakers, and also we do a lot of promotion that takes a ton of time of the day, and we have to look for other guests, and also we write newsletters, monthly newsletters, and what else?
Don't forget all the editing you do.
Oh, editing.
Yukimi is our biggest video and audio editor.
Yeah. And then also we also do we create playlists, monthly seasonal playlist. It's a lot of work, but just like Mike, I think you said just now that I don't feel like this is a work. It's such a pleasure and privilege to do. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of it is a new way of connecting with people, connecting with artists, connecting with ideas, and that is really exciting in this space, I think.
Exactly, and we have to keep talking about it, and then somehow this wonderful thing of music, especially where pianists, so piano playing, tradition of piano has to evolve to something more, right? Not to change the entire thing completely, but evolve to something more beautiful, and that we can connect to a much wider audience and reach out to people. I think
What
that.
What do you guys mean by, because Eric, you mentioned that too, being on the cutting edge of classical piano playing, or classical piano, I guess, in general. And what does that kind of look like and I guess sound like in a way? There's that's an interesting concept because there is this old tradition of piano, and yet I just listened to
from Mark's thing.
No, it was from the Olympics. Hiromi, the jazz pianist.
Oh, Yaruma.
Yeah, and she was amazing, and she's really taken jazz piano kind of in a new and exciting direction, I think. And so, what does that look like in kind of more the classical realm in your mind?
Right. Well, first of all, we don't just focus on classical. We're interested in all kind of pianistic developments. I mean, Ray mostly does pop, and we had on Jim Riddle, who's a jazz pianist. But of course, the three of us, our background is classical, and we do a lot of classical. There's a lot of different angles that we cover. Yukimi mentioned Dr. John Skidmore. He does performance psychology, right? So this is a very new field, especially in music.
Right.
You mentioned, Mike, the Olympics. Of course, Olympic athletes have been studying performance psychology for some decades now, but it's still a relatively new idea in music, and particularly classical performance. So that's one area. We also have people like Ray Mack and Jonathan Ong taking advantage of new technology and new platforms. Another new technology
even
related.
Mike
Yes.
Mike
Grande,
right?
with Rock Out Loud, who he has video conferencing software that is built from the ground up for musical performance and lessons, as opposed to something like Zoom, which is more business oriented. Another example of a technological platform is Tonebase. We talked to Ben Lottie, who's the director of piano at Tonebase, and this is a relatively new website where they interview and do lessons and master classes with the biggest names in classical piano, and then create this huge database of videos that subscribers can access at any time. So basically, you can have a lesson with somebody at the highest levels of university education that you wouldn't otherwise have access to unless you were a student there.
By the way, that is so huge, and now this is like the full democratization of education as a whole. But music is so difficult for that because of how tactile it is, and I think that's a world changing thing. Is the idea of taking Khan Academy, if you will, and bringing it to university level, kind of music level, these other realms of just getting the best teachers and the best students together.
Absolutely. Well, when you talk about the democratization of education, I mean, in a way that started with YouTube, right? Because there's so many people learning how to play the piano on YouTube now. And so the idea behind Tonebase is, why don't we give people the best possible artists and teachers, really cream of the crop, so that they can trust the information that they're getting, because on YouTube, sometimes you never know.
Right. That's I had so many students come to me and go, you play something, and I go, hey, where'd you learn that? That's amazing. Where's the music? And they go, oh, I looked, they did the little MIDI characters on YouTube. It's a new way of learning, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure for some students, it's their first stop, especially if it's a song that they pick out themselves that they want to learn by ear.
Yep.
Yeah. Even piano companies have developed things. They knew. I mean, I used to work for Yamaha for a little bit, and some of the new technology, the digital pianos are being run on iPads, or Android devices, and you can see there's a little light for each key. Basically, tells you which key to play. It doesn't teach you how to play it or what finger to use or the technique, but you can basically pick out a song and learn it just from an app. with a new digital piano. You don't need a teacher. In a way, you don't need a teacher at all.
That's cool.
So it's cool and it's scary at the same time. How do we juggle these things? And
it's only scary if you're afraid of the new.
Right. How does one stay relevant as a teacher? That's a big challenge.
Yeah, that is true. That's part of the reason we're doing this. We're pushing ourselves to adapt. Certainly the last year showed us that we all need to be able to adapt to potentially great changes in the environment. And so this is part of the way we're doing that.
Here's a bit of a setup question, but I'm wondering, a lot of the podcasts and YouTube platforms or videos and channels that you see, a lot of them are music based. And I wonder if musicians, I've thought about this and I'd love to get your thoughts. If musicians are already prepped for this kind of work, because Yukimi, as you were mentioning, so many things you do behind the scenes, video editing and this and that. And the preparation you guys do, reading about guests and preparing questions and all that. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you don't get paid for. And I think musicians are used to that. We practice and practice. We don't get an hourly wage for a practice. We just hope to make enough at a concert for that to, even out. And if we get, let's say, $1,000 at a concert, most laymen would say, well, that's so much money. And I said, yeah, but it was 200 hours worth of work to put into this concert. So do you think musicians are really well equipped to handle this new change?
That is a great question. So one of the guests, he is a international concert pianist, Frederick Chu. He really gave us a lot of wisdom about it. He's a traditional concert pianist. And what's amazing about him is that he already produced 30 CD albums, solo and chamber, but mainly solo. His ideas, his innovative ideas about piano is just so unlimited. It's just, some of the CD albums, he did some really quirky things, and so that he can reach out to much wider audience, so that classical piano is not this snobby things. So I don't know if I am answering your question. I don't remember the question itself.
Oh, no,
but
you're answering a lot of it. Yeah. If we're well suited, actually, you mentioned Frederick Chu. I love his playing, and I think I have his Chopin Etudes CD. But he's produced so many things, and he is a different kind of artist, and he pushes the boundaries, I think.
Exactly.
And just, are we as musicians suited to this new, just doing new things and putting the work in, because we're just used to that with our own careers.
Right. And then what was amazing about is that he is knowledgeable about so many different things, not just piano, but he is so into technology too. I just saw his live stream a couple months ago. So it was very audience engaging, fun event that he created. And then the audience actually can vote which piece spoke to us. That's cool. Something. Yeah, it's amazing. But he is the one who taught me about, you as a 21st century pianist, you have to have many different kinds of knowledge, not just playing the piano. Yeah.
And I think it was called a classical smackdown or something like to that extent, right?
Yeah.
It was really cool. And we got so
that.
Excited. Everybody wants to win, It was so cool. It's so engaging.
It's like when you go to those piano bars, they have dueling pianos. That's a big thing.
Exactly.
And it's like, what? There's not a big deal. I've heard them, of course, for me, maybe my snobbish ears. I don't know. But I'm like, whatever. This is not my type of thing. But people eat it up,
Well, he does the dueling piano, but both sides of it himself.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's brilliant. Yeah. We had recently Thomas Rosenkratz on, and he does a lot of kind of more modern music, and there is this new I guess as we talk about modern concert music, I even hate say art music. I don't like using the word classical. It's weird, but as we talk about modern music for performance, the idea of bringing technology in, bringing in different genres, bringing in different ideas to kind of say something that's never been said before. It seems to be. Do you find that's a kind of a unique or something that we're going to see more of in the future?
That's a very good question. Okay, so there's two kind of balancing forces here. There's every artist's individual kind of reason to be, and then there's what the audience wants, right? And there may or may not be a tension between that depending on the artist and the audience. Certainly, technology is playing a big role in modern music and art, and will continue to do so. At the same time, there's always an audience for the traditionalists. So yeah, we're kind of interested in the merger of that. I just wanted to say before, just as a very basic example of how things don't stay the same. Even in the classical piano tradition, the repertoire has changed over the years. And what was once standard rep 100 years ago, some of that's fallen out and has been replaced by newer pieces. So it's just natural for things to be in flux and for the tradition to be evolving. And so that's what we're kind of trying to get a beat on, how are people adapting? What are they finding success with? How are people, using new artistic means to find new means of expression, that sort of thing.
It's interesting. And music, sometimes I think people, I think we like to classify things. And so when we take music and we subdivide it so many times, I'm thinking of more, pop and rock music where you have like 45 different styles of metal,
Sure. Yeah.
And I had in fact, I had a band over here tonight. We were playing some music, and we were talking afterwards about how we'd go to concerts back in the day, and you'd have these very different genres of music playing on the same bill, and and it allowed for more exposure, I guess, but you don't see that today. You don't see that, specifically in the pop or rock world or jazz. Like if you're going to see a band, you're going to see 3 other bands that sound almost identical, and
right.
And the classical world, the concert world, the art world, it seems, I wonder if we have a tendency to subdivide in the same way, and instead of having really disparate ideas going on in a concert setting, really focusing in, and I can see the reason for both, but it's just an interesting idea that seems to be floating in my head.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much to talk about there. I think what you're talking about is kind of a byproduct of the internet age. There's a lot of talk nowadays, even just about how people get their news and how everyone's kind of isolated in their own bubble, own like-minded bubble. Whatever you believe, people just naturally tend to gravitate towards what they like. And then the internet allows you to spend as much time as you want in that bubble. So it's the same kind of thing with artistic taste. Once you figure out what you like, you may end up with this playlist that is all of one genre. At the same time, with globalization, we've seen such merging and cross-pollination of different cultures and cultural influences. If you just look at pop, for example, they draw from all different genres and old traditions, and they find ways to make them new again. And a lot of artists and creative types, such as myself, are really drawn to that whole idea of, take a little bit from here and a little bit from here and mix them together. And what do we get? Speaking as an American and as a biracial person, I've always been really interested in what we can gain from that kind of cultural mixture.
Right.
So there's people who are doing that, and there are audiences who are interested in that. So the potential is definitely there.
Oh, it's a lot to think about. I love it. Yeah. I'm just thinking too, I want to go back a little bit to the comment you made about, I guess, classical music and the diversity of it, and that things are changing. They're always in flux. And of course the classical tradition, let's say, is in a way much older than the pop tradition, although popular music has always been, part of culture as well. But the classical concert tradition seems to be such a relic today, and I think pianists such as myself are trying to keep that alive, but also infuse it with new blood. And I think 150 years ago, music or repertoire was coming in and out of fashion was very fast. I think the last 75 years or whatever, it's kind of stayed. A few new pieces have gotten in there. I think audiences today are a little bit hesitant to listen to quote unquote modern music or new music. They always have been. I just think things are changing so rapidly. It's hard to be in connection with new audiences. So a few pieces get into that core repertoire, but maybe not as much as they would have in the 19th or early 20th centuries, where things were changing so fast and so much. I wonder if the digital age is going to either help change classical piano music and infuse it with more things and kind of broaden it, or that whole generation that grew up with it or loves it is just going to die off, and the new generation is going to like totally new things. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I feel like I need to bring up, first of all, I know I'm talking a lot, and I want to get Clara and Yukimi back in here, but just to answer your question, Elias, I feel like I need to bring up the fact that we need to remember that classical music is by and large the popular music of the past. Mm-hmm. And this is true.
Great perspective.
Yeah, and this is true of many other genres as well. I mean, you can't really call rock and roll popular music anymore, because this is the popular music of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Not so much now. Jazz was once popular music, now considered extremely niche.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And a lot of classical music is really the popular music of the 19th century. So classical musicians are kind of keeping that tradition alive, just as jazz and rock and roll artists are in their own respective traditions. So I feel like that's kind of the angle you want to be taking when you consider these questions, right? Yeah. So I would start there.
Yeah.
And I just want to, as I'm listening to this great conversation, I'm thinking about this afternoon while I'm walking around Milano, right? We went to this church where the Last Supper of Da Vinci, was, and I tried to get in, no tickets yet. And then on the side, there's this giant poster of Korean pop, the boy band, what is called?
BTS or something?
BTS, exactly.
Yeah, those guys are everywhere.
Da Vinci and BTS.
Right.
I was like, is there a concert happening right now or anything? And my dear friend Polo, he's like, oh, I'm not sure today, but I can ask my niece. She's really into BTS. That's all she listens to.
Oh, that's so funny.
I'm thinking, I came to Italy to find a room of classical music, and all I'm listening to BTS.
Next thing you know, you're going to be going to a McDonald's.
Yeah.
I know. You never know. Well, there's a funny place. Yes.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But I guess there's a way to reach out to newer generations and newer listeners with what we have. So, as I said, Frederick Chu has this creative idea of programming, and I think I'm seeing a lot more similar like this, where each concert has a theme, and bringing in more composers that you have never heard of. Some wants to bring more female pieces by female composers, for example, or compositions by African American composers, for example. Mm-hmm. So people are trying to do that, and also I think when we talked with Jim Riddle, who is a jazz pianist, he was our guest, and he is my jazz piano teacher. I started learning. Anyways, cool. He says there's more integration going on. Jazz is influenced by classical, and then also as some of the Debussy pieces are influenced by jazz, for example. So there is integration. So that's something that we can also maybe see in the future, and
that's a wonderful perspective, because it is, if you think about it, more of a conversation over time, as opposed to competing genres. It's this kind of like, I'm taking what you, it's almost like this conversation where I'm taking what you said, adding my little perspective, and we all kind of grow exponentially from that.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that's also changing the way the piano pedagogies, piano teachers are thinking. So I think Eric knows more than I do, but there are lots of new piano method books out there, but that is not traditional anymore. The approach is so changing, right, Eric?
Right. Well, I would say a big part of that is we've learned so much about child psychology and how children's brains develop in the last couple of decades. And as a result, the pedagogy has had to change. So if you go back 50 years, most of the piano teaching methods were very reading centric. And they start the kids right on the staff, and then they introduce a lot of information at once. And even just visually to look at on the page, there's just so much information, even aside from the music. And now we understand that kids, especially young kids, don't receive information well that way. And that in fact, learning music is a lot more like learning a language. And if you think about how you learn a language as a baby and then a toddler, first you listen, then you speak, and then reading comes much later. So just as an example of the way things have changed, the more modern methods
and they're integrating more different genres in the method
that
book,
too,
right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. So they start kind of with ear training first and technique, but also bringing a lot of different genres to kind of make it more accessible.
That is exciting.
Do you think that kind of seems a little reminiscent of the Suzuki method, or at least how it was taught in Japan?
Yes.
I don't know if it translated well to the U.S., but the fact that you're doing a lot more technique, posture, listening, oral skills,
and learning by rote.
Yeah, rote learning, and then you read music.
Yeah, so I think Suzuki really had the right idea, and he was kind of a pioneer in that area. I don't have a ton of experience with Suzuki. I'm not Suzuki trained, so I just have kind of rudimentary understanding of what happens. So I do not claim to represent the Suzuki method, but my understanding is that the method that he designed works really well in an environment where, first of all, you're able to have group lessons, because he originally designed it for string instruments. It was a little bit more difficult to get together 8 pianos in a room. And also the parents are constantly working with the kids, which I pretty much recommend for young students anyway, but it's not always possible with every student. And also, again, the Suzuki method is quite old. We've learned some new things since then, but I think he was really on the right track for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But one last thing, I was just thinking, a few of the guests that we interviewed, for example, Selena, what's her last name?
Yeah.
Prostressing, right? She specializes in teaching children with special need, or what was neurodiverse students, right? Yes. And also James Ratkin, who is in charge of what is it called, America?
America Productions.
Exactly. So they put on these concerts for students or musicians that might not have a chance to ever perform in Carnegie Hall, right? To perform. And so I think it's the broad way of music education these days. Like, again, speaking of myself, like I grew up in China, so like in the Lang era, it's like if you don't become Lang, you shouldn't play, right? But now it's so different. And one of this great meditation teacher that we all studied a little bit from, Madeline Bruiser, and she teaches professional musicians to meditate, to kind of find the calmness, right? So all of this is very different, I think, from the past, right? How we were almost trained in such way, sometimes like Olympic champions, right? It's like you have to be certain way to be there. But I think today it's changing, which is great to see.
Yeah. We've had other guests on. We've talked about just the fact that conservatories, that life maybe isn't really preparing us or teaching us the things we need to know, and for
Right.
various reasons. I mean, we look at sports. We often have sports analogies for music, and it doesn't always work. Partly because we don't have the infrastructure they do. You know, sports teams. You always have a team doctor. You have a team psychologist. You know, you have a team trainer or many team trainers. Musicians or orchestras, they don't have those kinds of things. They don't have somebody on staff that does Alexander technique and massages, you know, after all the concerts. They don't have somebody on staff that deals with the psychology of performance, you know. And we need to have that sort of thing. And I think when we're trained at conservatories, most of the old guard, let's say, it's okay, how do you play this piece? And since piano is so difficult and it has so much literature, you know, much more than any other instrument, except maybe the voice, there's almost no time for those other things, or they're separate classes that nobody takes seriously. So I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. I don't have any solution yet, but I think what we're all talking about is helping us arrive at some sort of solution.
You know, Elias, I really appreciate what you're saying. I had on, just to kind of keep the sports analogy going a little bit, I had on a friend of mine from high school. We were talking about old, you know, good old high school football days. And one of the things he mentioned was, you know, even the idea of hydration, you know, back when I played football, you know, that was almost held over you as a punishment. You know, like if you were thirsty, but you couldn't suck it up, you know, you were, you know, you weren't tough enough or whatever. And you had to do certain things in order to get the reward of actually going and getting a drink of water. Well, now we've learned, you know, how, and we've learned how important hydration is to the body and all these sorts of things. And I think that carries on into the music world as well. You know, if all we're doing is focusing on certain techniques and certain pieces and getting to be really proficient at certain things, and we miss, you know, the you know, quote, hydration part of life, you know, we're going to miss out on, you know, a lot and miss the whole point and possibly injure ourselves or do psychological damage. I mean, there's a lot to what I think you're saying, Elias.
Yeah, guys. So, there's some great things I can talk about here. This actually kind of leads into our season 2 a bit, because I can't divulge the names just yet, but we got some big plans to have on some a guest from top level conservatory. And, you know, I haven't myself been in university or conservatory for many years, so I feel quite out of touch. I know that they're trying to adapt to, you know, the current realities of performance, and, you know, having the music industry and having a musical career. Certainly, it's never easy. Just as an example, I know USC, where I went for my master's, soon after I left, they started actually a popular music degree. Of course, they're based in LA, so they're a little bit more entertainment oriented than some other universities might be. I know people are trying new things, so we're going to have on, like I said, some guests from top level conservatories to see how they are adapting. At the same time, a friend of mine wants to discuss what he sees as the failings in higher level education, like you were talking about, Elias, and are we really preparing these students enough? And I'm personally, I've always felt this kind of disconnect or a little bit of cognitive dissonance at the fact that there's so many music schools that graduate so many students every year, and there's just not that much work in the industry. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And so are we setting these people up for failure? I think there's this kind of idea that where there's a will, there's a way, and you know, people are going to kind of float to the top if they're meant to do it. But maybe there's a more gentle or compassionate approach. Maybe we need more resources, you know, to help train these musicians. Maybe there really is just not that much room in the market, and fewer people should be going into it. But there's certainly a lot to discuss there, and we're definitely planning on getting into that in our next season.
That's going to be great. Yeah, because I think that's the other part of this changing realm is the changing market itself. You know, music has become, you know, more of a less of an art, more of a commodity, right? It's something to be listened to while you're doing something else, or in back of a TV show or something like that. It's not necessarily meant to be listened to on its own anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I've as a composer, I've been working on some new projects lately, and the last few years I've been doing a lot of scores for animations, and I got used to writing music to accompany a visual. I'm finding it's really difficult to kind of break out of that idiom now and write music that stands on its own. And I feel like I see that a lot in the current artistic environment. I feel like movie scores aren't as memorable as they used to be. Like the other day, I was introducing one of my students to Alan Silvestri. I think because he found a song, which I believe was from the movie Beowulf. He introduced that to me in his lesson, and I was like, oh, well, Alan Silvestri is one of the greatest Hollywood composers of all time.
Right.
So then I showed him the soundtrack to Back to the Future. And Alan Silvestri, of course, did all the Avengers movies as well. And like, I feel like the score Back to the Future is so memorable and exciting and visceral. And I just don't get that same feeling from a lot of modern soundtracks. And I was watching some recent pop music videos that had incredible, such imaginative visuals. And even in these music videos that were, they're made for musicians, I felt like the music was accompanying the visuals. I kind of feel like that's more the paradigm of our time, and it's difficult to get back to music first. That's what I'm trying to work on right now as a composer, and I'm struggling with that.
That's awesome.
That's really interesting. Really interesting.
These are great ideas, great thoughts. We should have more discussions on some of these sidelines. I wish we could.
Sure.
Absolutely. We really need to. I just to kind of finish up, Yukimi, you mentioned you guys are now, opening up, especially in New York, you're starting to open up more. Things are happening. You're having recitals. Can you talk to a little bit about what you guys are planning to do?
Yeah, sure. So we not only we're doing podcasting together, but we also do joint solo concert. So back in May, we did the first joint recital, live streaming from our own home. And then each of us played a couple of pieces, and I played Brahms Sonata, Eric played Debussy Preludes, and then Clara played several different pieces like by Bach and Sanson and Bartok and etc. So it was great. We collaborated with this group of people, Haiti. They are, I guess, Clara, they're a group of, it seems like they do similar like podcasting.
Right. Yeah. They are a group of people that met through a personal development seminar who also study a lot of philosophy. And during the pandemic, they just decided to interview all kinds of people, from musicians to artists to, sports people, medicine, doctors, all kinds of. So, yeah, it was beautiful actually to collaborate.
Sure. And then so they were able to bring in a lot of audience for the live stream. So we live stream it on YouTube and Facebook. So then we're going to do is to have this old Broadway themed concert in probably November. We're going to do the in-person concert and live stream. That venue allows us to do both. So we're very excited. We're going to celebrate the, Broadway is coming back in September. So we're going to celebrate, and we're going to do all Broadway piano live transcriptions of Broadway pieces.
Oh, that's going to be so fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be so fun. I wanted to, by the way, this is you're listening to And If Love Remains. We've got the co-host of the Piano Pod podcast. I want to thank each and every one of you for being on the show, sharing your perspective and getting to know you guys a little bit. We'd love to have you on again. Clara, let's start with Clara, then Yukimi, then Eric. Can you guys tell us a little bit If people want to know more information about yourself, if you have a website, quickly, maybe a project or two you want to share with the audience, I'd love to give you that opportunity.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So again, my name is Clara Zhang, and I am the owner and the co-founder of Rational Music Studios. So the studio is on the Upper East Side, and you can look us up on the internet. We're everywhere, but I'm very excited to be collaborating with Eric and Yukimi this last year and a half. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Yukimi?
Yes. Sorry. Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Oh, just if people want to know more about you, about your studio, if they want to, if they want more information about any projects or anything that you have that you want to share.
Okay. Sure. I am trying to do a lot more solo concerts in the future. So I am planning to do all nocturne solo recital sometime soon, and nocturnes from Fields to Clara Schumann to Lieberman, who is the really latest hottest composer of our time. And also I'm teaching online right now. So anybody who wants to play, I teach not only classical, but I teach somewhat jazzy things too. So I am trying to help students to discover what music means to them. So that's my approach. So anyone who wants to take lessons, just look me up.
Right on. Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, so I have two websites. EricHunterMusic.com is my musician website, and Eric Hunter Music Studio is my teaching website. I teach both in person and virtually. And right now, I just started a new project a couple of weeks ago, which is I'm working on a concept album for the first time based on the trilogy of the Three Body Problem books. And yeah, I think I might be working on that for a long time. It's a big project, but that's what I'm up to right now.
Oh, wonderful!
And your piano podcast is there? We'll put
Yes.
the website in the program notes, but if you want to just talk about or mention that.
Yeah, sure. So our website is thepianopod.com. And there you can get all our latest news, see our socials if you want to follow us. And there are links to all the episodes, which you can get the audio version on pretty much every podcasting platform. And we also have a YouTube channel where you can watch the show because we do video as well as audio.
Awesome. Great.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, each of you, for being on our show and sharing your insight. It's been a lot of fun for me. Elias, thank you very much for helping putting this together.
Oh, it's been great. I love it.
Thank you guys. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome. My name is Mike Levitt, and you've been listening to And If Love Remains.